She walked into that glittering ballroom as one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, poised, respected, unstoppable. But by the end of the night, her name would be whispered in shock, and not for her success. One single moment of arrogance, fueled by wealth and prejudice, would turn celebration into humiliation. What no one expected was how she'd respond, calm, unshaken, and ready to make them regret everything. How does a billion-dollar deal vanish in seconds? This is the night they learned power doesn't always look like them. Ava Johnson had spent years building her empire from the ground up. The daughter of school teachers, she was no stranger to hard work, late nights in a tiny apartment, surviving on instant noodles while drafting business plans that no one believed in. Now, at just 36, she was the CEO of a thriving tech company, hailed as one of the most promising young leaders in the industry. Invitations to elite galas and billionaire boardrooms had become routine, but Ava never forgot where she came from, or who still doubted she belonged. The night of the gala was supposed to be a milestone. A billion-dollar partnership was on the table, the kind that could change everything for her company and everyone who worked there. Dressed in an elegant black gown, Ava walked through the doors of the hotel ballroom, her confidence unshaken. Yet behind the champagne smiles and polite handshakes, she felt something colder, eyes that measured her, whispers she couldn't quite catch. She told herself it was nothing. Just nerves, just business. But as the evening unfolded, it became clear this was no ordinary deal, and no ordinary room. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the faint hum of money. Ava smiled through conversations, fielding polite compliments about her company's success. But beneath the surface, there was something sharper, a current of disbelief that she'd earned her place here. A few guests praised her surprising rise, their words lined with condescension. One older man even joked that she must have a very generous mentor, as if her brilliance needed explaining. Still, Ava kept her composure. This deal mattered too much to take anything personally. The billionaire family she'd come to meet, the Hawthorns, were legacy power players. Their signature on the contract would open doors in every corner of the business world. So when their matriarch, Eleanor Hawthorne, greeted her with a smile too thin to be genuine, Ava brushed it off. But then came the whispers. At first soft, then sharper. Someone laughed about her background. Another guest asked if she was with the staff, as if the diamond pendant around her neck didn't scream otherwise. Ava ignored it all, until she caught the eldest son, Richard Hawthorne, staring at her with a smirk that didn't fade. The meeting began over champagne flutes and polite nods. Ava laid out her vision, every word crisp, confident. The room should have been impressed. Instead, Richard interrupted her mid-sentence, questioning her figures with exaggerated disbelief, as though she were a child who'd brought the wrong homework. The tension sharpened when she stood her ground. He leaned in, his voice low but loud enough for the table. "You really think you belong here, don't you?" The words weren't just dismissive. They were a warning. Ava felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't flinch. She countered his point with flawless logic, earning a brief silence. Then, as if determined to reassert control, he laughed and made a crude remark about buying class. His mother chuckled softly, as if this were all a harmless joke. Every eye in the room was on Ava now. Some watched with curiosity, others with open contempt. The deal was slipping, not because her proposal was weak, but because prejudice was louder than reason. And then it happened. As the tension boiled over, Richard made a gesture so dismissive, so physical, it crossed every line of decency. A sharp sting, a stunned gasp from nearby tables, and in an instant, the room froze. Ava didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't even blink. She simply stood there, tall and unbroken, while the Hawthorns exchanged nervous glances. The billion-dollar deal they thought they controlled had just taken a turn they'd never expected. What would she do next? Walk away in silence, or make them regret ever underestimating her? The room erupted, not in outrage, but in stunned silence, as if no one could quite believe what had just happened. The sting on Ava's face burned hotter than the chandelier. Light, but it wasn't the pain that stopped her cold. It was the look on their faces, smug, certain, untouchable. Richard Hawthorne didn't apologize. He didn't even flinch. He just leaned back in his chair, swirling his champagne as though nothing had happened, daring her to react. Ava's breath came fast, but her voice stayed steady in her own head. Don't give them what they want. Don't let them see you break. Around her, the crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few whispered, some looked away, but not one person stepped forward. This was the moment they expected her to shrink, to walk out humiliated, to swallow the insult and sign their deal anyway. This was the moment every barrier she'd ever faced seemed to gather in one room, telling her to know her place. But Ava didn't move. She stared Richard down until his smirk faltered, until Eleanor Hawthorne cleared her throat with forced elegance. Perhaps we should return to business, the matriarch murmured, as if this humiliation were nothing more than a scheduling hiccup. Ava's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the contract, not to sign it, but to tear it in half. The sound sharp as breaking glass. Gasps rippled through the room. Billion-dollar deals don't vanish in seconds, but this one just had. You think I need your name? Ava said, voice calm, eyes unyielding. But after tonight, it's your name the world will remember, and not for the reasons you hoped. She turned, every step deliberate, her heels striking marble like gunshots. Cameras flashed, phones recorded, and for the first time, the Hawthornes looked afraid, not of losing money, but of losing power. This wasn't just business anymore. It was war. Ava didn't look back as she walked out of that ballroom. By morning, her phone was flooded with messages, some praising her courage, others warning her she'd made a billion-dollar mistake. But Ava didn't see it that way. Walking away wasn't a loss. It was freedom. It was proof that her worth could never be measured by a contract signed in a gilded room by people who thought they owned power. News outlets picked up the story. The video of Richard Hawthorne's arrogance went viral, and suddenly the whispers Ava had endured in silence became headlines the world could no longer ignore. Investors who once hesitated to back her were now lining up, not out of pity, but because they saw what real leadership looked like under fire. But beyond the business deals and public praise, the night left Ava with something deeper, a reminder that racism isn't always shouted in the streets. Sometimes it's dressed in tuxedos, hidden behind polite smiles, and business as usual. And every time someone refuses to stay silent, it chips away at that facade. Ava didn't just protect her own dignity, she exposed a truth too many still try to deny. The question now isn't whether she'll succeed, it's how many more doors have to be slammed, how many more names have to be shamed before power finally looks like the world we live in. Because Ava's story isn't just her own, it's a mirror. And the real question is, when we see injustice staring back at us, will we turn away or will we finally do something about it? The stories presented on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. We believe in a world where everyone is treated with dignity, fairness, and equality under the law. Our goal is to share thought-provoking stories that inspire positive change and meaningful reflection. Any resemblance to real people, events, or organizations is purely coincidental. These stories do not reference actual individuals, events, or entities and carry no political, social, or religious agenda.